The Firekeeper's Bride, Part 10. A Love Written in Fire. Firekeeper had spent his life fighting against fate, fighting against the fire that burned within him, fighting against the king who sought to use him, fighting against the walls he had built to keep people away. But for the first time in years, he wasn't fighting. He was falling, and he could no longer stop himself. The morning after the storm, Seraphina woke to the sound of steel clashing in the courtyard. Kael was already gone. She found him training alone, his body tense, his movements sharper than usual. She knew what this was. Avoidance. After last night, after what almost happened, he was trying to push it away. Seraphina stepped onto the stone steps, watching him. "You didn't sleep," she said. Kael stilled but didn't turn. "Neither did you." She crossed her arms. "Are you going to pretend it didn't happen?" Kael exhaled, lowering his blade. "I don't regret it," he admitted. "But I cannot let it happen again." Seraphina frowned. "Why?" Kael looked at her then, his golden eyes heavy with something darker than longing. "You don't know what I've done," he murmured. Seraphina's breath caught. "Then tell me." For a moment, he hesitated. Then, finally, he told her the truth. Years ago, before he was locked away in the keep, Kael had killed a man. Not in war, not in self-defense, but in rage. The fire had consumed him once before, taking everything in its path. He had sworn never to lose control again. He had sworn never to let himself want anything too much. Because when Kael Draven wanted something, he burned for it. And he was terrified of burning her. Seraphina listened in silence, her heart pounding. Finally, she stepped closer. "You are not that man anymore," she whispered. Kael's jaw tightened. "How can you be sure?" Seraphina held his gaze, steady and unshaken. "Because I have stood beside you, and I have never felt safer." Kael's breath hitched. She was too close now, too close to the fire, and this time, he did not move away. Kael lifted a hand slowly, carefully, as if giving himself one last chance to stop. Then, his fingers brushed against her cheek. Seraphina closed her eyes. The warmth of him sank into her skin. Not burning, not painful, just Kael. She leaned into his touch, and that was it. Kael shattered. With a rough breath, he pulled her to him, crushing his lips against hers. The fire roared to life between them, but this time, he did not fear it. Because Seraphina was not afraid. She met him with equal heat, her hands tangling in his cloak, pulling him closer. For so long, Kael had believed he could never have this, never have her, but she was here, she was his, and he would never let her go. That night, Seraphina stood with Kael on the balcony of the keep. The world stretched before them, a world they had both fought for. "The king will return," she murmured. Kael nodded. "Let him." She looked up at him, studying his face. "We could leave," she whispered. "Go somewhere far away. Start over." Kael was silent for a long time. Then he took her hand, pressing it against his chest, where his heart burned steady and strong. "This is my home," he said. "And now, it is yours too." Seraphina exhaled softly. For the first time, she realized she did not want to leave. Because her home was not a place. It was him. Kael lifted her hand, pressing a slow, reverent kiss to her fingers. "I will never let the king take you from me," he murmured. Seraphina smiled. "Then we face him together." Kael's golden eyes burned like embers in the dark. "Together," he promised. And for the first time, Kael Draven did not fear the fire inside him, because now, he had something worth burning for. The end.